What you're about to witness will shatter everything you believe about survival, intuition, and the hidden secrets buried beneath America's most desolate landscapes. A desperate mother's $160 gamble on worthless desert land led to a discovery so extraordinary that it's rewriting how scientists understand underground water systems. But when federal investigators arrived to seize her property, what the resident Bobcat family revealed about the water source was beyond anything experts had ever documented. Sarah Martinez never imagined that losing everything would lead to the greatest discovery of her lifetime. After her husband's construction business collapsed during the 2023 recession, leaving them drowning in $340,000 of debt, Sarah found herself scrolling through government land auction websites at 2 a.m., desperately searching for any property cheap enough to provide shelter for herself and her 28-year-old daughters, Emma and Sophia. Most lots were selling for thousands, far beyond her reach, but then she spotted something that made her heart skip. Lot 47B in the Mojave Desert, 12 acres of seemingly barren wasteland with a starting bid of just $160. The property listing was brutally honest about its worthlessness. No road access, no utilities, no structures, no known water source. The buyer assumes all risks, property considered unsuitable for development or habitation. The aerial photos showed nothing but cracked earth, scattered rocks, and what appeared to be a small depression that might have once been a pond decades ago. Every rational voice in Sarah's head screamed that this was a foolish waste of money they couldn't afford to lose. But something about that dried pond called to her, a strange intuition she couldn't explain. With only $180 left in her checking account and eviction notices piling up on her kitchen table, Sarah placed the bid at 11:59 p.m. on a Sunday night. When she won the auction 3 days later, her mother called her crazy, her friends questioned her sanity, and even Sarah herself wondered if desperation had finally broken her judgment. But as she printed out the deed to 12 acres of apparently worthless desert, she felt something she hadn't experienced in months: hope. She had no idea that beneath that barren surface lay secrets that would attract the attention of hydrologists, federal agencies, and a family of bobcats whose behavior would prove that animals possess knowledge about the earth that humans have forgotten. The journey from bankruptcy to a discovery that would change everything was about to begin, and it would start with a simple decision to trust her instincts over logic. The drive to Lot 47B took Sarah and her daughters through increasingly desolate terrain, past abandoned gas stations and sun-bleached billboards advertising long-closed motels. Emma and Sophia pressed their faces against the windows of their aging Honda Civic, watching the landscape transform from suburban sprawl to endless stretches of sand, sagebrush, and jagged rock formations. The GPS lost signal twice, forcing Sarah to navigate using a hand-drawn map provided by the county assessor's office. When they finally reached what the map indicated was their property boundary, there was no fence, no markers, just a rusted metal post with faded numbers barely visible in the blazing afternoon sun. Sarah parked the car and stepped out into a heat that felt like opening an oven door. The silence was absolute except for the wind whistling through distant canyon walls. Emma immediately complained about the temperature, while Sophia wandered toward the depression Sarah had seen in the aerial photos. What struck Sarah first wasn't the harshness of the landscape, but an unexpected sense of tranquility. Despite the apparent barrenness, she noticed subtle signs of life: birds circling overhead, small animal tracks in the sand, and patches of hardy desert plants that seemed healthier than she'd expected in such an arid environment. The depression Sophia was exploring turned out to be roughly 30 feet across and perhaps 8 feet deep, its bottom covered with smooth stones and what looked like the remnants of much older vegetation. As the family explored their new property, they discovered they weren't alone. Fresh paw prints around the dried pond belongs to something substantial, and Emma spotted movement among the rocks about 50 yards away. Through Sarah's binoculars, they could make out sleek, spotted forms watching them from the shadows, a family of bobcats that seemed surprisingly unafraid of human presence. Most wild bobcats flee at the first sign of people, but these animals observed the newcomers with calm curiosity, as if they were accustomed to protecting this particular piece of desert. That first night, camping in a borrowed tent while the girls slept in the car, Sarah was awakened by strange sounds. Not the typical desert night chorus of coyotes and owls, but something else. A rhythmic scratching and digging coming from the direction of the dried pond. When she cautiously approached with a flashlight, she discovered the bobcat family systematically digging in specific spots around the depression's edge, their behavior focused and purposeful in a way that defied everything she knew about typical feline behavior in desert environments. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work, so if you're enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. Over the following weeks, Sarah and her daughters established a makeshift camp on their desert property while searching for affordable housing options nearby. What began as a temporary shelter became an unexpected opportunity to observe the bobcat family's increasingly strange behavior. The cats weren't just randomly digging. They followed precise patterns, always returning to the same spots around the dried pond at dawn and dusk, their excavations becoming deeper and more systematic with each passing day. Sophia, who had always possessed an unusual connection with animals, was the first to notice that the bobcats were unearthing something specific. While Emma helped their mother set up solar panels and organize their camping supplies, Sophia spent hours watching the cats through binoculars, documenting their activities in a notebook. She observed that the largest bobcat, which she named Atlas, always dug in the northeastern corner of the depression, while two smaller cats worked methodically along the southern edge. Their digging wasn't the frantic scratching of animals seeking prey. It was deliberate, almost ritualistic. On their 15th day at the property, Sarah decided to investigate the areas where the bobcats had been most active. Using a small camping shovel, she began carefully excavating one of their dig sites. Just 18 inches below the surface, her shovel struck something that rang like metal against stone. Brushing away the sand and debris, she uncovered a network of smooth, rounded rocks that seemed deliberately placed, forming what appeared to be a primitive drainage system leading toward the center of the depression. The discovery became even more intriguing when Emma noticed that the rocks were damp despite no recent rainfall in the region. Sarah tested the moisture with pH strips from her old chemistry set, finding that the water content was significantly higher than anything that should exist in such arid conditions. The bobcats watched her work with intense interest, occasionally approaching to sniff the excavated areas before retreating to their observation posts among the surrounding rocks. Word of their unusual camping situation reached Dr. Michael Reeves, a geology professor from the nearby university, when Sarah posted questions about desert hydrology on local social media groups. Intrigued by her descriptions of the bobcat behavior and the mysterious rock formations, Dr. Reeves drove out to examine the site personally. What he found in that seemingly worthless desert depression would challenge his 20-year career studying groundwater systems and force him to reconsider everything he thought he knew about natural water detection methods used by wildlife. Dr. Reeves arrived at the property with specialized ground-penetrating radar equipment and a team of graduate students, expecting to debunk what he assumed were the desperate fantasies of a financially struggling family. His initial skepticism vanished within hours of beginning his geological survey. The radar readings revealed an extensive underground water system unlike anything documented in regional geological surveys, a complex network of natural aquifers and limestone caverns that should have been impossible in this particular desert formation. The bobcats' excavation sites corresponded exactly with the strongest water signals detected by the sophisticated equipment. Where Atlas had been digging in the northeastern corner of the depression, the radar showed a major underground stream flowing just 4 feet below the surface. The southern edge sites, where the smaller cats had focused their efforts, revealed a series of interconnected pools fed by natural springs that had somehow remained hidden from decades of geological exploration in the region. Reeves called in Dr. Elena Vasquez, a hydrogeologist from the State University, who brought additional testing equipment and a team of environmental scientists. Their preliminary tests revealed that the underground water system contained mineral compositions suggesting it connected to much larger aquifer networks extending hundreds of miles into neighboring states. The water quality exceeded federal drinking standards, with natural filtration through limestone creating exceptionally pure conditions rarely found in desert environments. The scientific team was particularly fascinated by the Bobcats' apparent ability to locate the precise points where underground streams were closest to the surface. Traditional geological surveys of this area had classified it as completely dry, yet the cats had somehow identified and systematically exposed the most accessible water sources. Dr. Vasquez documented that the animals' digging patterns followed the exact underground flow lines that only advanced sonar equipment could detect. Emma began filming the daily interactions between the research team and the Bobcat family, capturing footage that would later become crucial evidence. The cats showed no fear of the scientific equipment and actually seemed to guide researchers toward previously undiscovered water access points. When Dr. Reeves set up monitoring stations, the Bobcats would often sit nearby, as if supervising the work. The discoveries attracted attention from the U.S. Geological Survey, which dispatched federal investigators to determine why such a significant water system had never been officially documented. Sarah received an unexpected visit from government officials who informed her that her property might be subject to federal oversight due to its potential strategic importance for regional water management. The $160 investment was about to become the center of a much larger controversy. Federal investigator James Crawford arrived with a team from the Bureau of Land Management, carrying documents that made Sarah's heart sink. The government had classified her property as a critical water resource under the Federal Water Rights Act, meaning potential seizure through eminent domain for national security purposes. Crawford explained that underground aquifers of this magnitude required federal protection and management, especially given the ongoing drought crisis affecting 7 western states. The legal proceedings moved with frightening speed. Sarah received official notice that the government was initiating acquisition procedures for Lot 47B, offering compensation of $2,400, 15 times what she had paid, but nowhere near enough to secure alternative housing for her family. The bureaucratic language was cold and final. Property acquisition necessary for protection of strategic water resources essential to regional stability and national interests. Dr. Reeves and Dr. Vasquez found themselves caught between scientific excitement and ethical concerns. Their research had inadvertently triggered the federal response that now threatened to displace the family who had made the discovery possible. Dr. Vasquez privately warned Sarah that once the government took control, public access to the site would be permanently restricted, and the Bobcat family would likely be relocated to preserve the integrity of the water system. The Bobcats seemed to sense the mounting tension. Their behavior shifted dramatically as government surveyors began marking the property boundaries with official stakes and conducting round-the-clock monitoring of the water sources. Atlas became increasingly protective, positioning himself between the federal equipment and the main excavation site. The 2 smaller cats, which Sophia had named Scout and Shadow, began exhibiting stress behaviors, pacing restlessly and vocalizing in ways the family had never heard before. Sarah faced an impossible choice. Fighting the federal acquisition in court would require legal fees she couldn't afford and would likely prove futile against government water rights claims. Accepting the buyout would provide temporary financial relief, but would mean abandoning the property that had given her family hope and displacing the Bobcat family that had revealed its secrets. Emma's daily documentation had captured weeks of footage showing the unique relationship between the cats and the underground water system. Her videos revealed patterns that even the scientists had missed. The Bobcats didn't just locate water sources, they actively maintained them, clearing debris from natural drainage channels and preventing contamination from wind-blown materials. The cats weren't just using the oasis, they were its guardians, and their displacement could potentially damage the delicate ecosystem that had taken centuries to develop. The government relocation order came with a 30-day deadline. Sarah was required to vacate the property by October 15th, allowing federal teams to begin comprehensive extraction operations and establish permanent monitoring stations. The Bobcat family would be trapped and relocated to a designated wildlife preserve 90 miles away, where officials assured the family the cats would adapt to their new environment without the underground water system they had spent generations protecting. Dr. Vasquez made a desperate proposal to delay the relocation. She requested permission to conduct a controlled study comparing the Bobcats' water detection abilities against standard geological equipment. If the cats could consistently outperform human technology, it might justify allowing them to remain as part of ongoing research. Federal officials reluctantly agreed to a 2-week extension, viewing it as an opportunity to study potentially valuable animal-based detection methods for future water exploration projects. The testing protocol was rigorous and scientifically controlled. Dr. Reeves created a grid system across the 12-acre property, marking 200 test points where the Bobcats would be observed alongside simultaneous ground-penetrating radar scans. The cats had to demonstrate their water detection abilities in areas they had never previously explored, proving their skills weren't based on familiar territory memorization. Atlas immediately distinguished himself by identifying 17 underground water sources that had completely escaped detection by initial geological surveys. His accuracy rate exceeded 94%, compared to the 76% accuracy of the university's most advanced sonar equipment. Scout and Shadow proved equally remarkable, locating smaller springs and seasonal water collections that traditional methods had classified as non-existent geological formations. The most extraordinary discovery occurred on day 8 of testing. Atlas led the research team to a section of property that appeared completely barren, with no vegetation or surface indicators suggesting subsurface water. The cat began digging with unusual intensity at a spot that geological equipment had marked as solid bedrock. 26 hours later, Atlas's excavation broke through to reveal an underground chamber containing a natural spring that geological surveys had estimated was impossible at that depth and location. Sarah documented every moment of the testing process, knowing that her family's future depended on proving the Bobcats' irreplaceable value. Emma and Sophia helped by tracking the cat's daily routines and noting behavioral changes that might indicate different types of water sources. The data they collected would become the foundation for a revolutionary understanding of animal-based environmental detection, but first it had to convince federal bureaucrats that some discoveries are worth preserving exactly as nature intended them. The breakthrough came during week 2 of testing, when Atlas displayed behavior that stunned even the most experienced researchers. While the team was conducting routine measurements near the main water source, the largest bobcat began exhibiting signs of extreme agitation, pacing frantically around a section of ground that all equipment had classified as completely dry. Dr. Vasquez initially dismissed the behavior as stress from the constant human presence, but Atlas's persistence became impossible to ignore. The cat spent 3 consecutive days returning to the same 20-foot radius, digging with an intensity that left his paws bloody and raw. When Sarah approached to check on his condition, Atlas did something unprecedented. He grabbed her sleeve gently with his teeth and physically led her to the exact center of his excavation area. Scout and Shadow joined their leader, all 3 cats sitting in formation around a specific point and vocalizing in harmonized calls that echoed strangely off the surrounding canyon walls. Dr. Reeves reluctantly agreed to bring in heavy excavation equipment, despite ground-penetrating radar showing nothing but solid rock formations 15 feet below the surface. The excavation revealed layers of limestone and compressed sandstone that matched geological predictions perfectly until they reached 18 feet depth. Suddenly, the drill bit broke through into an enormous underground cavern system that extended far beyond their equipment's measuring capabilities.
The cavern contained a massive underground lake fed by thermal springs, with mineral compositions indicating direct connection to primary aquifer systems extending across 3 states. Water temperatures remained constant at 72 degrees Fahrenheit year-round, creating perfect conditions for a unique ecosystem that included species of cavefish and invertebrates previously unknown to science. The thermal activity suggested geothermal energy potential that could power small communities while maintaining the natural water system's integrity. Federal investigators immediately classified the discovery as having national significance for both water security and renewable energy development. The underground lake contained an estimated 2.3 billion gallons of naturally filtered water, enough to supply a city of 50,000 people for over 2 decades. More importantly, the thermal springs provided renewable
capabilities that could reduce dependence on fossil fuels while preserving environmental integrity. Atlas had somehow detected this massive underground resource through 18 feet of solid rock, demonstrating sensory capabilities that defied current scientific understanding of animal perception. The discovery forced federal officials to reconsider their relocation plans, as removing the bobcat family might eliminate the only known biological detection system capable of identifying similar hidden resources in other desert regions. Dr. Margaret Chen, director of the National Water Resources Institute, arrived from Washington, D.C. with a team of federal scientists and policy advisors to evaluate what she initially described as an anomalous geological situation requiring standard federal oversight. After spending 48 hours reviewing the data and observing the bobcat family's continued demonstrations of water detection abilities, Dr. Chen made a statement that would reshape federal water management policies. What we are witnessing here represents a paradigm shift in how we understand natural resource detection and environmental stewardship, Dr. Chen announced during a press conference that attracted national media attention. These animals possess capabilities that our most advanced technology cannot replicate. Removing them would be equivalent to destroying a living geological instrument that took evolution millions of years to perfect. The federal team's economic analysis revealed staggering implications. The underground water system could provide sustainable water resources worth an estimated $847 million over 20 years, while the geothermal energy potential added another $200 million in renewable energy value. However, these calculations meant nothing without the bobcat's unique ability to identify optimal access points that minimized environmental disruption while maximizing resource efficiency. Dr. Chen proposed an unprecedented solution. Instead of federal seizure, the government would establish the nation's first biogeological conservation partnership. Sarah would retain ownership of her property while receiving federal funding to maintain the site as a research station studying animal-based environmental detection. The bobcat family would be designated as essential scientific partners, with legal protections typically reserved for endangered species. The partnership agreement provided Sarah with a $75,000 annual stipend for property maintenance and research cooperation, along with a newly constructed research facility that included comfortable living quarters for her family. Emma and Sophia would receive full college scholarships for environmental science programs, while the site would become a training ground for the next generation of biogeological researchers. Atlas, Scout, and Shadow became the first wild animals in U.S. history to receive official federal recognition as strategic environmental assets. Their protection was written into law, ensuring that any future development of the water resources must maintain their habitat and honor their role as guardians of the underground ecosystem they had revealed.
The announcement triggered a fundamental shift in how federal agencies approached natural resource management, with Dr. Chen's team establishing protocols for identifying and protecting other locations where wildlife might possess knowledge about hidden environmental treasures that conventional technology had failed to detect. 3 years later, the Martinez Desert Research Station has become a pilgrimage site for scientists, environmentalists, and families seeking hope in impossible circumstances. Sarah now leads guided tours where visitors watch Atlas, Scout, and Shadow demonstrate their remarkable abilities to detect underground water systems that continue to baffle researchers with advanced degrees and million-dollar equipment. Emma, now 14, has published her documentary footage in National Geographic, inspiring a new generation of young scientists to study animal intelligence and environmental partnership. Sophia maintains detailed behavioral logs that have contributed to 12 peer-reviewed research papers on animal-based geological detection. The twins have become the youngest recipients of the Presidential Environmental Youth Award. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work, so if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. The underground lake now supplies clean water to 4 neighboring communities while generating renewable geothermal energy that powers 3,000 homes. Most remarkably, Atlas has trained his offspring to identify water sources, creating the world's first documented case of animals deliberately teaching humans about environmental resource management. The Bobcat family has grown to 9 members, each possessing the same extraordinary detection abilities. Sarah's $160 investment in worthless desert land has generated over $12 million in federal research funding and saved countless communities from drought-related displacement. But the real treasure isn't measured in dollars. It's the proof that nature holds solutions to humanity's greatest challenges if we're humble enough to listen to teachers who don't speak our language. The Martinez family story demonstrates that sometimes our most desperate moments lead to our greatest discoveries. When everything seems lost, trust your instincts, pay attention to the natural world around you, and remember that the most valuable resources are often hidden in the places everyone else has given up on. What would you do if you found yourself with $160 and a choice between safety and possibility? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories of ordinary people making extraordinary discoveries that change the world.